I'm Margaret Wilson, 68, and last Christmas changed everything. After 40 years of hosting family celebrations, I found myself standing in my son's doorway as my daughter-in-law Heather spat those words at me, "There's no place for you here." I left in tears, driving home alone on Christmas Day, my carefully wrapped gifts still in their trunk. I never imagined that walking out their door would set off a chain reaction that would completely transform our family within 24 hours. The next day brought revelations I wasn't prepared for. Before I share what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. The holidays can be especially difficult for family relationships, and your support means the world. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life family stories. Now, let me take you back to understand how we got to that devastating Christmas moment. My late husband Thomas and I built a beautiful life together over 45 years of marriage before cancer took him 3 years ago. We raised 2 wonderful children, Catherine, who moved to Colorado for work, and Robert, who settled just 20 minutes from our family home with his wife Heather. Thomas was my rock, my partner in everything, and when he passed, I felt like half of me went with him. Robert and Heather have been married for 17 years. They met in college, and I remember being so excited when he brought her home to meet us. She was charming, intelligent, and seemed to adore Robert. They have 3 beautiful children. Aiden, who's 15 now and reminds me so much of his grandfather with his thoughtful nature. Emma, a bright 12-year-old with a passion for science. And sweet little Lily, who just turned 8 last month. Before Thomas died, our family dynamic was warm and connected. Sunday dinners at our house were a weekly tradition. Holiday celebrations were joyful gatherings where everyone contributed, but Thomas and I typically hosted at our spacious home. Robert would smoke the turkey while Catherine made her famous pies. Heather usually brought her signature cranberry salad and helped with decorations. The grandchildren would run through the house, their laughter the best music we could ask for. After Thomas passed, I tried to maintain our family traditions while navigating my grief. The first Christmas without him was difficult, but Robert suggested I still host, saying, "Dad would want us to be together." It wasn't the same, but having my family surrounding me provided comfort I desperately needed. However, by the second year, I noticed subtle shifts. Heather began suggesting they should host gatherings to take the burden off me. While I appreciated her consideration, I actually found comfort in the familiar routines of preparing holiday meals. Still, I agreed, not wanting to seem difficult. That Thanksgiving at their house, I noticed Heather rearranged the serving dishes I brought and redid the table I had started setting. Small things. But they stung. Robert gradually became more distant, often seeming uncomfortable around me. Our phone calls grew shorter and less frequent. When I'd stop by unannounced as I always had, he seemed anxious, checking his watch or glancing at his phone. Once, I overheard him telling Heather, "I didn't know she was coming over." They didn't realize I could hear Heather's exasperated sigh in response. Financially, Robert has done well as an IT project manager for a healthcare company. Heather works part-time as an interior designer, mostly for friends and family connections. They live in a beautiful colonial-style house in a sought-after neighborhood with excellent schools. Thomas and I helped them with the down payment as a wedding gift, something we were happy to do. Over the years, we contributed generously to our grandchildren's college funds, helped with private school tuition when Aiden needed specialized attention for his dyslexia, and covered the costs of numerous family vacations. We never saw these as loans, but as investments in our family's happiness and future. The tensions with Heather were subtle at first. A comment about my outdated cooking techniques, suggesting the children shouldn't have second helpings of my desserts, or gently correcting my parenting advice with "Things are different now, Margaret." I tried to respect their boundaries as parents while staying involved in my grandchildren's lives. This past year, something shifted more dramatically. My invitations to take the grandchildren for weekends were frequently declined due to their busy schedules. When I did see them, they seemed more reserved, less likely to share details about their lives. Emma, once so talkative with me, grew quieter. Aiden often had headphones on, creating a barrier. Only Lily still ran to me with the same enthusiasm. When November came around, I naturally assumed we'd discuss Thanksgiving plans. To my surprise, Robert called to say they were going to Heather's sister's house in Connecticut. "Maybe next year, Mom," he said. his voice carrying an apologetic tone that didn't quite mask his relief. I spent Thanksgiving with my friend Nancy and her family, trying not to feel the ache of absence too deeply. For Christmas, I expected we might return to tradition, but Robert called with an invitation that came with conditions. "We'd like you to come for Christmas dinner, Mom," he said, "but Heather thinks it would be best if you came at 3 rather than in the morning. The kids get overwhelmed with too many people during gift opening." Though hurt, I agreed. This would be the first Christmas morning in 15 years I wouldn't see my grandchildren's faces as they discovered what Santa brought. Still, I was determined to make the best of it. I spent weeks selecting perfect gifts, preparing traditional family recipes, and looking forward to the limited time I would have with them. I had no idea just how limited it would be. Christmas morning felt eerily quiet without the excited voices of my grandchildren filling my house. I tried calling Catherine in Colorado, but with the time difference, they were still asleep. I busied myself preparing the dishes I had promised to bring. Thomas's famous cornbread stuffing, my mother's cranberry relish, and a chocolate pecan pie that was Aiden's favorite. I dressed carefully in a festive red sweater with snowflakes that Lily had helped pick out during our rare shopping trip in November. I styled my hair, applied makeup to brighten my face, and even put on the pearl earrings Thomas had given me for our 40th anniversary. Looking in the mirror, I gave myself a pep talk. "Just be gracious, Margaret. This is about the children." The drive to Robert and Heather's house was short but felt endless. My car was loaded with carefully wrapped presents and food containers. I had followed Heather's request to arrive at precisely 3 p.m., not wanting to give her any reason for displeasure. When I rang the doorbell, Emma answered, her face lighting up momentarily before she glanced behind her and composed herself. "Hi, Grandma," she said quietly, giving me a brief hug before stepping back. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I replied, trying to mask my confusion at her subdued greeting. Robert appeared in the foyer, taking some of the bags from my hands. "Merry Christmas, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek stiffly. The house was immaculate, as always in Heather's care. A designer Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, decorated in coordinating gold and cream ornaments. Beautiful, but missing the handmade ornaments and mismatched treasures that had adorned our family trees for generations. I noticed my gifts to the children were no longer under the tree where I had placed them during my authorized drop-off earlier in the week. Heather emerged from the kitchen wearing a pristine apron over her green dress. "Margaret, you're right on time," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're just about to sit down. Where are my Christmas morning phone calls, though?" I attempted to joke, referencing our family tradition of calling relatives on Christmas morning. Heather's smile tightened. "We've been so busy, haven't we, Robert?" "I brought Thomas's stuffing," I offered, holding out the container. "Oh," Heather's expression flickered with something like annoyance. "We already have stuffing. I made my mother's recipe, but we can put it out too, I suppose." I followed them to the kitchen, where Lily spotted me and came running. "Grandma, did you bring presents?" "Lily," Heather cut in sharply. "Grandma's presents are for after dinner, remember?" Lily's face fell, but she nodded obediently. I noticed Aiden sitting at the kitchen counter, engrossed in his new tablet. He looked up briefly, "Hey, Grandma," before returning to his screen. "Aiden, please put that away during dinner," Heather instructed, receiving a reluctant nod in response. Dinner itself was a tense affair. The conversation stayed superficial. Discussions about the weather, Aiden's basketball team, and Emma's science fair project. I noticed Robert drinking more wine than usual, refilling his glass frequently while avoiding eye contact with both Heather and me. When I asked Emma about her best friend Zoe, whom she'd always loved talking about, she glanced at her mother before answering vaguely, "She's fine." The children seemed unnaturally restrained, as if performing in a play rather than enjoying a family Christmas. The breaking point came during dessert. Lily, sitting beside me, was struggling to cut through the crust of Heather's apple pie. "Here, sweetheart, let me help," I offered, reaching for her plate. "I can do it, Mom," Heather interjected, but I had already taken Lily's plate. "It's no trouble," I assured her, cutting the pie into bite-sized pieces as I'd done countless times before. When I returned the plate to Lily, she smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Grandma. Your pie is always easier to eat." It was an innocent comment from an 8-year-old, but Heather's fork clattered against her plate. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice tight. Nothing, Lily whispered, suddenly interested in her dessert. No, I'd like to know what that meant, Heather persisted. Is my cooking being criticized at my own table? Heather, Robert began, his voice a warning. I'm sure Lily didn't mean anything by it, I said softly. Children just say things. Children repeat what they hear, Heather replied, her eyes fixed on me. And I wonder what they've been hearing. The tension in the room was palpable. Emma stared at her plate while Aiden shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps I should help clear the dishes, I offered, trying to diffuse the situation. No, Heather said flatly. I think you've helped enough today, Margaret. Robert drained his wine glass. Let's all take a breath here. It's Christmas. Yes, it is Christmas, Heather agreed, her voice rising slightly. In our home. Where apparently everything I do isn't good enough compared to Grandma's way. I never said that, I protested, genuinely confused by the escalation. You don't have to say it, Heather snapped. It's in every correction, every recipe you insist on bringing, every time you undermine my parenting. Heather, please. Robert attempted to intervene. She turned on him. No, Robert. I'm tired of pretending. Your mother has been judging me, judging us, for years. I felt my chest tighten. That's not true. I only want to be part of the family. Part of the family? Heather laughed bitterly. You want to be the center of it. The matriarch who can't accept that things change. Mom, Robert pleaded, but whether he was addressing me or Heather wasn't clear. I think, Heather said, standing up, that this dinner is over. Margaret, I've tried to be patient, I've tried to include you in appropriate ways, but you consistently overstep. I felt tears threatening. I was just helping Lily with her pie. It's never just anything with you. Heather's voice rose further. It's always some passive-aggressive way to show how I don't measure up to the great Margaret Wilson. The children were completely silent now, their eyes wide with distress. Heather, that's enough, Robert finally said firmly, but it was too late. No, I'm done pretending, Heather continued, pointing toward the door. There's no place for you here, Margaret. Not when you can't respect boundaries. The words hit like physical blows. I looked to Robert, expecting, hoping, he would contradict his wife, defend his mother. Instead, he stared at his empty wine glass, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. Robert, I whispered, maybe it would be best if you went home? Mom, he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. We can talk tomorrow when everyone's calmer. I sat frozen for a moment, unable to believe what was happening. The room swam before my eyes as I slowly stood, legs shaking. I'll get my coat, I managed to say, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Grandma, don't go, Lily pleaded, tears streaming down her face. It's okay, sweetheart, I assured her, though nothing felt okay. Grandma will see you soon. Emma looked devastated but silent. Aiden stared resolutely at the floor. I gathered my coat and purse, aware of Heather watching me with arms crossed. Robert followed me to the door, still avoiding eye contact. The presents, I remembered suddenly. I brought presents for everyone. We'll give them to the kids, Robert said. Drive safely, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow. I walked to my car in a daze, aware of neighbors enjoying their Christmas evening, lights twinkling in windows, the sounds of laughter carrying through the cold air. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught a glimpse of Emma's face in an upstairs window, her hand raised in a small wave. The tears I'd been holding back came then, blurring my vision so badly that I had to pull over a block away. Sitting in my car on Christmas Day, I cried for everything I seemed to have lost. My husband, my son, my place in the family I had spent a lifetime building. The house was dark when I arrived home. I hadn't left any lights on, not expecting to return until late. In previous years, Thomas and I would have spent Christmas evening relaxing by the fire, sipping eggnog, and reminiscing about the children's excitement. Now, the silence was deafening. I moved through the rooms mechanically, turning on lamps, plugging in the Christmas tree I had decorated alone this year. The colorful lights and familiar ornaments that had brought me comfort just days before now seemed to mock the emptiness surrounding me. I changed out of my festive sweater and carefully hung it up. Looking at my reflection, I saw the makeup I'd applied so hopefully hours earlier now streaked with tear tracks. I washed my face and put on the soft pajamas and robe Thomas had given me our last Christmas together. In the kitchen, I stared at the refrigerator filled with food I'd prepared for breakfast the next day, assuming the grandchildren would come over as they usually did on December 26th. Ham, quiche ingredients, cinnamon roll dough ready to bake, all for a gathering that clearly wouldn't happen now. I checked my phone repeatedly, hoping for a message from Robert, perhaps an apology or explanation, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. I typed out several texts to him but deleted them all. What could I say that wouldn't make things worse? Around 8 p.m., I tried calling him, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Robert, it's Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm home safely. I'm sorry about what happened today. Please call me when you can. I love you." The words felt inadequate, but I couldn't articulate the confusion and hurt swirling inside me. Restless, I wandered into the living room where photo albums lined the bookshelves. I pulled one out, Christmas celebrations through the years. There was Robert at 5, beaming beside his new bicycle. Catherine at 12, proudly displaying the chemistry set Santa had brought. Thomas carving the turkey, wearing the ridiculous Santa hat the children insisted he don each year. More recent photos showed Robert and Heather in the early years of their marriage, both of them laughing as they helped decorate our tree. Then the grandchildren came along. Baby Aiden in his first Christmas outfit, toddler Emma fascinated by ornaments, newborn Lily asleep in my arms while Christmas chaos swirled around us. When had things changed? I tried to pinpoint the moment, the misstep, where my relationship with Heather had soured. Had I been too involved? Not involved enough? Had I criticized her parenting without realizing it? The questions circled without answers. My phone rang, startling me. For a moment, hope surged that it might be Robert, but the screen showed Nancy's cell. My friend's voice was warm with concern. "Margaret, I'm just checking in. How was Christmas with the family?" I tried to respond normally but broke down instead, the story pouring out between sobs. "Oh, Margaret." Nancy sighed when I finished. "That's terrible. Do you want me to come over?" "No," I assured her. "It's late, and it's Christmas. Your children are there. They're all watching that new action movie Bill wanted to see," she said. I could slip away. "I appreciate it, but I need some time alone to process this," I admitted. "I keep thinking I must have done something to deserve such treatment, but I can't figure out what." "You didn't deserve that," Nancy said firmly. "Something else is going on there. That level of hostility doesn't come from nowhere." We talked for nearly an hour, her steady presence a balm to my wounded spirit. Before hanging up, she made me promise to join her family for dinner the next day if I didn't hear from Robert. After our call, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in Thomas's favorite chair. "What would you do?" I asked aloud, imagining him across from me. Thomas had always been the mediator in family disputes, the voice of calm reason. He would know how to navigate this situation. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in our bed, still our bed in my mind, though Thomas had been gone 3 years, staring at the ceiling. Around 3 a.m., I moved to the guest room, unable to bear the emptiness beside me. As dawn broke on December 26th, I made a decision. I wouldn't force my presence where it wasn't wanted. If Robert and Heather needed space, I would give it to them, painful as it might be. I would focus on taking care of myself and wait for Robert to reach out when he was ready. I got up and made coffee, sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad. I began writing down thoughts about boundaries and respect, about grief and change, trying to make sense of the previous day's events. The exercise helped calm my racing mind, and by the time the sun was fully up, I felt more centered, if not less hurt. What I didn't realize was that while I was making peace with my new reality, events were already in motion that would completely transform our family's dynamic by nightfall. I had just finished my second cup of coffee when my phone rang at 7:45 a.m. The screen displayed Robert home, but when I answered, it wasn't my son's voice I heard. "Grandma?" Emma's voice was hushed, trembling slightly. "Can you talk?" "Emma?" "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, surprised and concerned. "Is everything okay?" "No," she whispered. "Nothing's okay. I've been wanting to tell you for so long. But Mom, her voice caught. Mom checks my phone. I'm using Aiden's right now while he distracts her. My heart began to race. What's going on, Emma? Are you safe? We're not in danger or anything, she quickly assured me. Not like that. But Grandma, things are really bad here. Has been for a long time. I sat down, sensing this conversation would require my full attention. Tell me everything, honey. Mom isn't who you think she is, Emma began, her words tumbling out rapidly as if she feared being interrupted. When you're not around, she's different. She yells at Dad all the time, tells him he's worthless. She goes through his phone, his emails. She checks the mileage on his car. I felt a chill. Does she hurt you children? Not physically, Emma clarified. But she can be really mean. She makes Lily cry almost every day over little things like not folding her clothes right. She told Aiden he's stupid last week because he got a B on his math test. And she's always saying awful things about you when you're not here. What kind of things? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Emma hesitated. She calls you manipulative, says you try to buy our love with presents and treats, that you undermine her parenting on purpose. Her voice dropped even lower. Grandma, she tells Dad, that you're trying to control him with money. That's why Dad's been acting weird around you. Money? I echoed, confused. What does she mean? I don't understand all of it, Emma admitted. But I heard them fighting about finances a lot. Dad lost his job 3 months ago. The revelation stunned me. What? But he never said anything. Mom wouldn't let him tell anyone, especially you. She said you'd just use it to control him more. Emma's voice became urgent. Dad's been doing freelance work, but it's not enough. Mom keeps spending like nothing's changed. The credit cards are maxed out. I heard Dad say they might lose the house. My mind reeled with this information. Robert unemployed for 3 months. Financial troubles severe enough to threaten their home. And I'd had no idea. There's more, Emma continued, her voice now barely audible. Yesterday wasn't an accident, Grandma. Mom planned it. Planned what, exactly? The fight. Getting you to leave. Emma took a shaky breath. I overheard her telling Dad that they needed to handle the Margaret situation before Christmas. She said they need access to your inheritance from Grandpa. I felt physically ill. My inheritance? She keeps talking about how much money you have sitting around doing nothing, how it should be helping family. Dad didn't want to ask you, but Mom's been pushing him. She said if he wouldn't do it, she'd make sure you weren't around anymore to interfere. Make sure I wasn't around? I repeated, alarmed. Not like that, Emma quickly added. Just cut you off from us, make you unwelcome. She paused. The Christmas dinner was a setup. Mom told us not to seem too excited when you arrived. She took the presents you left earlier and hid them in the garage. She was just waiting for any reason to start a fight. The pieces began falling into place. Heather's heightened tension throughout dinner. Her disproportionate reaction to a child's innocent comment. Robert's excessive drinking. It had all been orchestrated. Why are you telling me this now, Emma? I asked gently. Because it's getting worse, she replied, her voice breaking. After you left, Mom and Dad had a huge fight. Dad finally stood up to her about how she treated you, and she threatened to take us away where neither of you could find us. Aiden recorded it on his phone. She paused, and I could hear movement in the background. I have to go. Mom's coming upstairs. Please help us. Grandma. Emma, wait, I said urgently. Are you safe right now? Do you need me to come get you? I can't talk anymore, she whispered. Just please don't tell Mom I called. The line went dead. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, trying to process everything I'd just learned. My son, unemployed and in financial crisis. My grandchildren, living in an emotionally volatile home. My daughter-in-law, actively plotting to isolate me and potentially access my finances. Most troubling was Emma's fear. The secretive nature of her call, the terror of being discovered, these weren't the concerns of a child in a healthy home. Something needed to be done, and quickly. I had been prepared to step back, to give Robert and Heather the space they seemingly wanted. But now, knowing my grandchildren were in distress, that Robert was struggling under pressures I hadn't known about, remaining passive was no longer an option. I needed more information, concrete evidence of what was happening, and I needed help. This situation was beyond my capacity to handle alone. If you've ever had that moment where everything you thought you knew about someone was suddenly turned upside down, you understand how I felt. I was about to dive into an investigation of my own family, and I had no idea how dark it would get. Has someone in your family ever shown a completely different face to the world than the one they show at home? Let me know in the comments. Now, let me tell you what I discovered when I started looking beneath the surface. With Emma's revelations still ringing in my ears, I knew I needed to proceed carefully. If Heather was truly as controlling and volatile as Emma described, any missteps on my part could make the situation worse for Robert and the children. Yet I couldn't sit idle with what I now knew. My first call was to Jonathan Mercer, who had been our family attorney since Thomas and I wrote our first wills 30 years ago. Jonathan had handled Thomas's estate and had become a trusted advisor. "Margaret," he greeted me warmly. "This is unexpected on the day after Christmas. Is everything all right?" "I'm afraid not, Jonathan," I replied, proceeding to give him a summary of recent events, including Emma's disturbing phone call. Jonathan's tone grew serious. "I'm concerned about several aspects of what you're describing, Margaret. First, about your financial documents. Has anyone else had access to them recently?" I thought about this. Robert has a key to my house for emergencies, and about 6 months ago, I was ill with bronchitis. Heather offered to help organize some paperwork for me while I recovered. Did that paperwork include financial statements, account numbers, your will? A chill ran through me as I remembered the stack of documents Heather had insisted on filing properly for me. "Yes, it might have. I recommend we take immediate steps to secure your accounts," Jonathan advised. "Change your online banking passwords, request new credit cards, and I'll prepare a financial power of attorney naming someone other than Robert as your agent, just as a precaution." "That seems extreme," I protested. "It's merely preventative," Jonathan assured me. "If nothing improper has occurred, no harm done. But if someone is attempting to access your accounts improperly, this creates a barrier." I agreed, and we spent the next 20 minutes making arrangements. Jonathan would email me documents to sign, and his assistant would pick them up that afternoon. He also suggested I start documenting every interaction with Robert and Heather, including dates, times, and what was said. "One more thing," Jonathan added before ending our call. "You mentioned previous financial assistance to Robert and Heather. Do you have records of those transactions?" "Yes, in my home office. Thomas was meticulous about documentation." "Good. Gather those records. If these were gifts, that's one thing. But if they were loans with repayment expected, that creates a different financial picture." After hanging up, I went to my office and began pulling files. Over the years, Thomas and I had provided substantial financial support to Robert and Heather. $50,000 toward their house down payment, $15,000 for Aiden's specialized educational program, $20,000 when Heather wanted to start her interior design business, and numerous smaller amounts for family vacations and home improvements. Some of these had explicitly been gifts, noted as such in our records. Others, particularly the larger sums, had been presented as loans, though we had never pressed for repayment. Thomas had kept meticulous notes of each transaction, including conversations about repayment terms that had never been formalized. My next call was to my bank. The representative sounded concerned when I explained I needed to check for any unusual activity on my accounts. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm glad you called," she said. "There have been 3 attempts in the past month to access your accounts online using incorrect passwords. After the 3rd attempt, the system locked, requiring in-person verification." My stomach dropped. "When was the most recent attempt?" "December 23rd, she replied. 2 days ago. I changed all my passwords immediately and arranged for 2-factor authentication on all accounts." The representative also flagged my accounts for heightened security monitoring. While looking through Thomas's files, I discovered something I'd forgotten. When setting up the grandchildren's college funds, we had made Robert and Heather co-trustees with us. After Thomas died, I had remained as primary trustee, but Robert and Heather technically had access. A quick call to the investment company confirmed that there had been recent inquiries about early withdrawal options, though no withdrawals had been made. By mid-afternoon, I had built a concerning picture of attempted financial access. Nothing had been successfully taken, but it wasn't for lack of trying. I needed more information about what was happening in Robert and Heather's household. I decided to reach out to my niece, Stephanie, who lived near Robert and whose daughter was friends with Emma. The conversation started casually, but soon turned revealing. "Aunt Margaret, to be honest, we haven't seen much of Robert's family lately," Stephanie said. "Heather always has excuses for why the kids can't attend birthday parties or why they have to cancel playdates. Maddie says Emma told her they're not allowed to have friends over anymore. Did Emma say why? Something about their mom being worried about people judging their house." Stephanie hesitated. "This is awkward, but there are rumors. Robert hasn't been at his office. Someone who works with him told Kevin that Robert was let go months ago. I just learned about that this morning," I admitted. "Emma called me." "Emma called you?" Stephanie sounded surprised. "That's significant. Heather monitors those kids' communications like a prison warden. My Maddie says Emma isn't even allowed to text without Heather reading everything." The conversation continued, with Stephanie sharing more concerning observations about Heather's controlling behavior and the family's increasing isolation. Before we ended the call, Stephanie offered to reach out to other family members who might have insights. "We've all been worried, Aunt Margaret," she confessed, "but Heather is so defensive if anyone asks questions. We didn't know how to help." My doorbell rang around 4 p.m. To my surprise, it was Catherine, my daughter, who wasn't supposed to arrive from Colorado until New Year's Eve. "Mom," she said, embracing me tightly. "Nancy called me." I got on the first flight I could. I broke down then, the emotional weight of the past 24 hours finally overwhelming me. Catherine guided me to the sofa and held my hand as I recounted everything. The Christmas disaster, Emma's call, and my day of disturbing discoveries. "This explains so much," Catherine said when I finished. "I've been concerned about Heather's behavior for years, but Robert always made excuses for her." "You were concerned? Why didn't you say anything?" Catherine looked uncomfortable. "I tried, a few times. But you seemed to think Heather was just going through adjustment periods. New marriage, new motherhood, career frustrations. And honestly, Mom, you and Dad were always so supportive of Robert. I worried you'd think I was being the difficult one." "Oh, Catherine," I said, dismayed. "I never meant to make you feel that way." "It's not your fault," she assured me. "Heather is very good at presenting one face to the world and another behind closed doors. The last time I visited, she went through my luggage when I was in the shower. Robert caught her, and they had a huge fight. Later, he begged me not to tell anyone, said she was just going through a tough time with anxiety." Catherine went on to describe a pattern of incidents. Heather opening Catherine's mail when it was addressed to Robert's house. Heather making disparaging comments about me when she thought Catherine would agree. Heather telling the children that Aunt Catherine thinks she's better than everyone because she moved away. "I tried talking to Robert privately," Catherine said. "He acknowledged there were problems but said they were working on it. I offered financial help if that was an issue, but he insisted they were fine." She shook her head. "I should have pushed harder, especially after Dad died and Heather's behavior toward you changed." While Catherine and I were talking, my phone pinged with an email from Jonathan. The subject line read, "Urgent. Account access attempt." According to the message, someone had just tried to access my investment accounts by phone, claiming to be me but failing the security verification. The attempt had been flagged due to the security alert we had placed earlier. "This is happening in real time," Catherine said, alarmed. "Do you think Robert knows what Heather is doing?" "I don't know," I admitted. "From what Emma said, it sounds like he's under tremendous pressure." We spent the next hour reviewing old emails and text messages from Robert and Heather with new perspective. Catherine pointed out subtle manipulations I had missed. Heather consistently positioning herself between Robert and me, Robert's messages becoming briefer and less personal over time, cancellations that always came through Heather rather than directly from Robert. "Look at these," Catherine said, scrolling through her own text history with Heather. "She's telling me one thing about why you can't see the kids, while telling you something completely different." It was true. Heather had told Catherine I was too busy with my new social life to watch the grandchildren one weekend, while telling me they had special family plans that same weekend. My phone rang, interrupting our analysis. It was Robert. Catherine and I exchanged nervous glances as I answered. "Mom?" His voice sounded strained. We need to talk, not on the phone. Can I come over? Of course, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Catherine is here too. There was a pause. Catherine? I thought she wasn't coming until next week. She arrived early. Robert, is everything okay? No, he said simply. Nothing is okay. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I hung up, Catherine and I looked at each other, both recognizing that whatever happened next would likely change our family forever. We need to be united on this, Catherine said firmly. No matter what he says, we need to make it clear that our concern is for him and the children, not about blame. I nodded, grateful for my daughter's strength. Do you think I should mention what Emma told me? Catherine considered this. Only if necessary. We don't want to put Emma at risk if Heather suspects she reached out to you. We spent the next 20 minutes preparing, gathering financial documents, putting on coffee, and steeling ourselves for what might be a difficult conversation. As the clock approached 6 p.m., we heard Robert's car pull into the driveway. The man who entered my home barely resembled my confident son. Robert looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. When he saw Catherine and me waiting, something in his expression cracked. I've made such a mess of everything, he said, his voice breaking. Robert stood in my entryway, looking so much like the uncertain teenager he'd once been that my heart ached. I opened my arms, and he stepped into my embrace, his body shaking with silent sobs. Let's sit down, I suggested gently, leading him to the living room where Catherine waited. She rose to hug him, and for a moment we were just a mother and her children, united in the face of trouble as we had been so many times before. When Robert finally composed himself, he sat heavily on the sofa, rubbing his face with both hands. I don't even know where to start, he admitted. Why don't you start with your job? I suggested carefully. Robert's head snapped up. How did you know about that? Catherine and I exchanged glances. We've pieced together quite a bit today, I explained. But we'd rather hear the truth from you. He sighed deeply. I was let go 3 months ago. Budget cuts. They gave me a decent severance, but it's almost gone now. He looked at me directly for the first time. I wanted to tell you, Mom. I really did. But Heather didn't want you to tell me. I finished for him. She said you'd use it as an opportunity to control our lives, he said, the words sounding rehearsed. That you'd hold financial help over our heads. Do you believe that? Catherine asked quietly. Robert hesitated. I don't know what I believe anymore. Everything's gotten so twisted. He looked around the familiar room, his childhood home. Did I ever thank you and Dad properly for helping us buy our house? Or for Aiden's school? Or any of it? You don't need to thank us, I assured him. We wanted to help. Heather says we should have received more, he admitted, shame coloring his face. That Dad's life insurance should have gone to us, not you. That the house should be in our names for estate planning purposes. He made air quotes around the phrase. And what do you think? Catherine pressed. I think I've been a coward, Robert said simply. I've let Heather's resentments and insecurities dictate my relationship with my own family. I've watched her manipulate situations, isolate the children, and disrespect my mother, all while telling myself it was just Heather being Heather. He looked at me imploringly. Yesterday was unforgivable, Mom. I sat there and let her speak to you that way, in front of my children. I drove home from dropping you off and looked at myself in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the man I've become. What changed? I asked. Why come here today? Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Emma showed me something this morning. She's been keeping a secret record of things Heather says and does when no one else is around. Voice recordings, screenshots of text messages, notes. He pulled up a file on his phone and hit play. Heather's voice filled the room, the venom in it shocking. Your grandmother only cares about controlling everyone. She thinks she's so perfect. Well, guess what? Once I get access to her accounts, we're cutting her out completely. She can die alone for all I care. I gasped involuntarily. Catherine reached for my hand. There are dozens of these, Robert said, stopping the recording. Dating back months. Comments about you. About Catherine. About me. Threats to take the kids if I don't man up and get access to your money. He shook his head. Emma's been gathering evidence, afraid that no one would believe how Heather behaves when others aren't around. Oh, Robert, I whispered. It gets worse, he continued, his voice flat. After I heard these, I confronted Heather. She denied everything at first, then claimed the recordings were taken out of context. When I wouldn't back down, she admitted she's been trying to access your accounts, said it was for our future and that you owe us anyway. He took a deep breath. Then she told me she's been having an affair with Brad Miller. Brad Miller was a friend of theirs, a financial advisor who had occasionally joined our family gatherings. I remembered him as charming, but somewhat slick. She says he understands her in ways I never could, Robert continued, that he appreciates her vision for their life together. Apparently, they've been planning to access your money, wait an appropriate amount of time, then leave together. She'd take the kids, of course. The calculated nature of the betrayal was stunning. How long has this been going on? Catherine asked. At least a year, according to text messages I found after she stormed out, Robert replied. She's been transferring money from our joint accounts to a private one. The deed to our house has been mysteriously misplaced. And Brad has been helping her investigate ways to contest Dad's will, claiming you exerted undue influence. I sat back, momentarily overwhelmed by the scale of the deception. Robert, I had no idea things were so bad. Neither did I, he admitted. Or maybe I did, but couldn't face it. I've been so focused on maintaining the appearance of success that I couldn't admit how toxic my marriage had become. He looked down at his hands. After Heather left this morning, I sat the kids down and asked them to tell me the truth about how things have been at home. What they told me. His voice broke. What did they say? I prompted gently. That they're afraid all the time, that Heather belittles them constantly, that she's told them if they don't play along with her plans, she'll take them away where they can never see me or you again. He looked up, his eyes haunted. My children have been living in fear while I worked overtime, trying to please a woman who's been plotting to destroy our family. Catherine moved to sit beside him. It's not too late to fix this, Robert. We're here for you. Just then, Robert's phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression turning to alarm. It's Aiden. He answered immediately, putting the phone on speaker. Dad? Aiden's voice was tight with panic. You need to come home now. Mom came back and she's freaking out. She found out Emma called Grandma yesterday. In the background, we could hear shouting and what sounded like breaking glass. Is everyone safe? Robert demanded, already on his feet. We're upstairs in my room. I locked the door, but she's really mad, Dad. She's throwing stuff and saying we're all going to regret this. Don't open the door, Robert instructed. I'm on my way. Is Emma with you? Yeah, and Lily too. Lily's really scared. Tell them I'm coming right now, Robert assured him. Stay together and stay in your room. As he ended the call, Robert looked at us, fear evident in his eyes. I have to go. We're coming with you, I said firmly, already reaching for my coat. Mom, no, he protested. Heather is unpredictable right now. Those are my grandchildren, I replied. And you're my son. We're not letting you face this alone. Catherine was already grabbing her keys. I'll drive. You make any calls you need to. The ride to Robert's house was tense, with Robert alternating between calling Aiden for updates and leaving a message for his lawyer. As we pulled onto his street, we could see several neighbors standing outside, looking concerned. Jessica Chen from next door hurried over as we parked. Robert, thank goodness, she said. I was about to call the police. There's been shouting and crashing sounds for the past 20 minutes. Are the children still inside? He asked anxiously. I haven't seen them come out, Jessica confirmed. But I heard Heather yelling about taking them somewhere. Robert sprinted toward the house, Catherine and I following as quickly as we could. The front door was unlocked, and the scene inside was shocking. The living room was in disarray, with broken picture frames and overturned furniture. Christmas decorations had been torn down, and gifts lay destroyed amid shattered ornaments. Aiden? Emma? Lily? Robert called, heading for the stairs. Dad? Emma's voice came from upstairs. We're still in Aiden's room. As we reached the top of the stairs, we saw Heather pounding on Aiden's bedroom door, her appearance disheveled, hair wild and mascara streaked down her face. "Open this door right now," she was shouting. "You ungrateful brats. After everything I've done for you." "Heather," Robert's voice was commanding in a way I'd never heard before. "Step away from that door." She whirled around, her expression contorting when she saw me and Catherine behind Robert. Oh, perfect timing. The whole Wilson cavalry to the rescue. "Did they promise you money, Robert? Is that why you suddenly found your backbone?" "It's over, Heather," Robert said calmly. "I know everything. About Brad, about the accounts, about how you've been treating the children. It's done." "You know nothing," she spat. "Those children are mine, and I'm taking them." "No, you're not," Robert replied. "Not like this, not ever." She lunged at him then, all pretense of control abandoned. "You're nothing without me, nothing. They'll all see what a failure you are." Robert caught her wrists as she tried to strike him, holding her at bay without harming her. "Aiden," he called over his shoulder, "call 911. "Already did," came Aiden's voice through the door. "They're on their way." Heather's eyes widened at this, and she suddenly changed tactics. "Robert, please," she said, her voice softening dramatically. "I'm not well. You know how I get sometimes. I just need help, not the police." The transformation was disturbing to witness, from rage to calculated vulnerability in an instant. "The children need to stay with me," Robert said firmly. "You need help. Yes, but not here. Not now." We could hear sirens in the distance. Heather's face hardened again as she realized her manipulation wasn't working. She wrenched away from Robert. "This isn't over," she hissed, looking directly at me. "You think you've won? I'll destroy this family before I let you control it, Margaret." "This isn't about winning," I replied quietly. "It's about protecting those children." The police arrived moments later, followed by an ambulance. After assessing the situation, they recommended Heather be taken for psychiatric evaluation, given her volatile state and threats. She went, eventually, but not without a final venomous glare that sent chills down my spine. Only after the police car pulled away did Aiden open his bedroom door. The 3 children looked terrified but physically unharmed. Lily ran straight into Robert's arms, while Emma, to my surprise, came to me. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she whispered as I held her. "I didn't know what else to do." "You did exactly the right thing," I assured her, stroking her hair. "You're very brave, all of you." As the chaos began to settle, Robert looked around the destroyed home, then at his shaken children. "We can't stay here tonight," he said decisively. "You'll all come home with me," I replied without hesitation, "where you always have a place." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The police officers took statements from all of us, including the children. One officer, a kind-faced woman named Officer Rivera, sat with Lily while she tearfully described how scared she had been when Mommy started breaking things. Robert's neighbor Jessica brought over clean clothes and toiletries for the children, having collected them from her own children's closets since Heather had locked the master bedroom before being taken to the hospital. Another neighbor, Mr. Patel, brought hot chocolate for the kids and offered to board their dog, Bruno, until things settled down. Through it all, I watched Robert transform before my eyes. Despite his own distress, he became the father his children desperately needed, calm, reassuring, and completely present. He knelt before each child, looking them in the eyes and promising, "We're going to be okay. We're together, and that's what matters most." While Robert and Catherine helped the children gather essential belongings, I spoke with Officer Rivera privately. "What happens now?" I asked. "Mrs. Wilson, your daughter-in-law is being taken for a 72-hour psychiatric hold for evaluation," she explained. "Based on the children's statements and the evidence of destruction, your son has grounds for an emergency custody order and possibly a restraining order. Will the children need to testify?" I worried about the additional trauma that might cause. The recordings and photographs, along with the officer's observations today, provide substantial evidence. Officer Rivera assured me. "The court typically tries to minimize children's direct involvement." She handed me her card. Given the financial concerns you mentioned, I'd recommend your son contact our department's Family Violence Unit for additional resources. There are specific protections for financial abuse as well. As I thanked her, Robert approached with Aiden's backpack slung over his shoulder. "The kids are ready," he said, his voice steady despite the strain evident in his eyes. "Officer, is there anything else you need from us tonight?" "Not tonight, sir. We'll be in touch tomorrow about next steps." She looked at the children, now clustered around Catherine. "Those are brave kids you've got." Robert nodded, his expression a mixture of pride and regret. "Yes, they are. Braver than they should have had to be." Before we left, Robert walked through each room, taking photographs of the damage with his phone for documentation. In the master bedroom, which Jessica had helped him unlock, he discovered several packed suitcases and international travel documents. "She was planning to leave," he said quietly when he rejoined us. "There are passports for her and the kids, but not me. And tickets to Buenos Aires for next week." The revelation sent another shock wave through me. How close had we come to losing the children altogether? The drive to my house was subdued. Lily fell asleep against Robert's shoulder in the back seat, while Aiden stared silently out the window. Emma sat between them, occasionally reaching for her father's hand. Catherine drove, glancing in the rearview mirror periodically. "We'll get through this," she said softly. Whether to reassure herself or all of us, I wasn't sure. At home, I quickly prepared the guest rooms. One for Robert, one for Aiden, and my sewing room had a daybed for the girls. Catherine insisted on taking the couch, wanting to stay close to everyone. The children moved through the familiar spaces of my home with a palpable sense of relief. This had always been a safe haven for them, a place of cookies and stories and unconditional love. Tonight, it became their sanctuary in a more profound way. After getting the children settled with clean towels and borrowed pajamas, I found Robert in the kitchen, sitting at the table with his head in his hands. "The kids are brushing their teeth," I told him, sitting beside him. "Catherine's helping Lily find her stuffed rabbit in the boxes of toys I keep here." He nodded without looking up. "I failed them, Mom. I failed them so completely." "No," I said firmly. "You got them out. You're protecting them now. That's what matters. I should have seen it sooner. All the signs were there." He finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Emma had been trying to tell me for months. In her way, asking if we could spend more time at your house, saying she didn't feel good when Mom was angry. I didn't want to see it." "Heather was very good at hiding her true nature," I reminded him. "She fooled all of us for a long time." "Not Dad," Robert said quietly. "He tried to warn me, right before you two went on that cruise for your anniversary. He said he'd noticed things that concerned him. I dismissed it as generational differences in parenting styles. This was news to me. Thomas never mentioned that conversation to me. He wouldn't have wanted to worry you," Robert said, and I made it clear I didn't appreciate his input. He looked away. Another regret to add to my collection. "Robert," I said, taking his hand, "Thomas would be proud of you today. The courage it takes to face the truth and protect your children. That's what he valued most. Being a good father." A small sound made us both look up. The three children stood in the doorway, Lily clutching her stuffed rabbit, Emma with her arm around Aiden's shoulders. "Can we have some hot chocolate?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Grandma always makes hot chocolate when we stay over." "Of course you can, sweetheart," I replied, rising. Some routines, even in crisis, provided essential comfort. As I busied myself with milk and cocoa, Robert opened his arms. His children didn't hesitate, rushing to him in a group embrace that brought tears to my eyes. They clung to each other. These wounded people I loved so dearly, finding strength in their connection. Catherine joined us, leaning against the doorframe with a sad smile. "Just like old times," she said. "Late-night hot chocolate at Mom's." "Not quite like old times," Robert answered, his arms still around his children, "but maybe something new, something better." We gathered around the kitchen table, mugs of cocoa steaming before us. For a while, no one spoke of Heather or the events of the day. Instead, Catherine told stories about her work in Colorado. I shared anecdotes about the book club I had joined, and gradually, the atmosphere lightened. Eventually, Lily's head began to droop, and Emma looked exhausted. Robert guided them upstairs to bed, while Aidan lingered behind. "Grandma?" he said when we were alone. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart. Did you know? About Mom? How she really was?" I considered my answer carefully. I knew things weren't right, but I didn't understand how serious it was. I should have paid closer attention. He nodded thoughtfully. "Me too. I kept thinking if I was better. At school, at basketball, at everything. She wouldn't get so mad all the time." His voice caught, but it didn't matter what I did. "Oh, Aidan," I said, my heart breaking for him. "None of this is your fault. Your mother has problems that have nothing to do with you or how good you are." "Dad says she's sick," he said. "That she needs help." "That's true. She does need help. But it doesn't mean we have to let her hurt us anymore, right?" His eyes, so like his father's, sought reassurance. "That's exactly right," I confirmed. "You can care about someone and still protect yourself from their harmful behavior." He seemed satisfied with this and headed upstairs after a quick hug. I cleaned up the kitchen, finding comfort in the familiar routine. When Robert came back downstairs, Catherine joined us in the living room. "They're all asleep," Robert reported. "Even Aidan, though he tried to pretend he wasn't tired." "What's your plan for tomorrow?" Catherine asked practically. Robert ran a hand through his hair. "I need to call my lawyer first thing. File for emergency custody, a restraining order. Start divorce proceedings." He looked daunted by the road ahead. "I need to figure out our living situation, find a new job, somehow maintain stability for the kids." "One step at a time," I advised. "The children can stay here as long as needed. You too." "Mom, I can't impose like that." "It's not an imposition," I insisted. "This house has always been your home too. And right now, what the children need most is safety and consistency." Catherine nodded in agreement. "I can extend my stay through January to help. Between the three of us, we've got this." Robert looked between us, and I could see him struggling with pride versus practical necessity. Finally, he nodded. "Thank you. Both of you. I couldn't do this alone." As Catherine and I assured him he wouldn't have to, Robert's phone rang. The hospital was calling. Heather was demanding to speak with him. "You don't have to talk to her," Catherine said immediately. Robert stared at the phone for a long moment before declining the call. "Not tonight," he said firmly. "Tonight is about my children and beginning to heal." As we prepared for bed, I paused at the door to the girls' room, watching Emma and Lily sleeping peacefully. Despite the trauma of the day, they looked safe now, protected. In the worst of circumstances, our family had found its way back to each other. I thought of Thomas then, wishing he could see how his son had found his strength in crisis, how the bonds of our family had held strong when tested. As painful as this journey would be, we would walk it together. Morning arrived with golden winter sunlight streaming through the windows. I had been awake since dawn, my mind racing with everything that needed to be done, everything that had changed in just 48 hours. Christmas Day seemed like a distant memory rather than 2 days ago. I was making coffee when I heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Lily appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair tousled from sleep, clutching her rabbit. "Good morning, sweetheart," I greeted her. "Did you sleep okay?" She nodded, patting over to lean against me. "Your house doesn't feel scary," she said matter-of-factly. The simple observation broke my heart. "No one should ever feel scared in their home, Lily. Mom said we had to be perfect or people would think we were bad," she continued, watching me pour orange juice. "Do I have to be perfect here?" I knelt to her level. "No, sweetheart. Not here. Not anywhere. You just have to be Lily, exactly as you are." She considered this seriously, then nodded as if accepting a new truth. "Can I help make breakfast?" "I would love that." I set her up with a small bowl to whisk eggs while I prepared to make French toast, Thomas's specialty that the children had always loved. One by one, the others joined us. Emma, still half asleep but offering to set the table. Aidan, immediately checking his phone for news. Catherine, who had already been for an early run, and finally Robert, looking as though he hadn't slept much but determined to face the day. Breakfast was a curious blend of normalcy and the extraordinary circumstances that had brought us together. We passed maple syrup and butter, discussed plans for the day, and carefully avoided mentioning Heather until the children had finished eating. When the children went to get dressed, Robert updated us on his early morning calls. My lawyer is filing the emergency custody petition today. The 72-hour psychiatric hold gives us some time to get things in order. I also spoke with a financial advisor about freezing our joint accounts and securing the children's college funds. What about your job situation? Catherine asked practically. I have an interview next week with a company I did some freelance work for last month, he replied. It's promising, but even best case, we're looking at financial challenges for a while. Robert, I said gently, I want to help. Not to control or interfere, but because I can, and because it's what family does. He didn't immediately reject the offer as he might have days ago. Thank you, Mom. I might need to take you up on that, at least temporarily. Catherine suggested taking the children shopping for essentials, clothes, toiletries, school supplies. While Robert met with his lawyer, it might do them good to get out of the house, have something normal to do, she reasoned. I watched my children planning together, working as a team as they had when they were young. The crisis had renewed a connection between them that had weakened over the years of Heather's influence. The day unfolded with purpose. Robert left for his lawyer's office, armed with Emma's recordings and documentation of yesterday's events. Catherine took the children shopping, promising lunch at their favorite burger place. I stayed home to prepare the house for extended guests, pulling out extra linens and rearranging the study to create a workspace for Robert. In the quiet of the house, I found myself in Robert's temporary room, making up the bed with fresh sheets. On the nightstand was a family photograph taken at Aiden's 10th birthday, Robert, Heather, and the 3 children, all smiling. Looking at Heather's seemingly warm smile, I wondered how I had missed the deception behind it. Or had I simply chosen not to see it, not wanting to acknowledge problems in my son's marriage? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Nancy. Margaret? How are you holding up? Catherine texted me a brief update last night. I filled her in on the situation as I continued preparing the room. Those poor children, Nancy said when I finished, and poor Robert. But thank goodness Emma had the courage to reach out to you. I keep thinking about what might have happened if she hadn't, I admitted. If Heather had succeeded in cutting me off completely, or worse, if she had managed to take the children abroad. But she didn't. Nancy reminded me. You're all together now. And that's what matters. After our call, I spent some time in my garden shed, retrieving boxes of childhood memorabilia I had saved over the years. Books Robert had loved as a boy that Aiden might enjoy, Catherine's old science kit that might interest Emma, and a dollhouse Thomas had built for Catherine that Lily could play with. These touchstones of family history seemed especially important now. When Catherine returned with the children, their arms full of shopping bags, I was struck by how much lighter they seemed. Lily was chattering excitedly about her new unicorn pajamas. Emma was describing a book she'd found, and even Aiden was engaged, thanking Catherine for a new basketball. Aunt Catherine let us pick everything ourselves, Lily told me importantly. I got purple toothpaste. That sounds wonderful, I replied, helping them unpack their purchases. Why don't you put your new things away while I make some hot chocolate? As the children headed upstairs, Catherine gave me a tired smile. They did really well. A few meltdowns in the store. Lily got overwhelmed at one point, and Aiden had a moment when he saw a shirt his mom would have called sloppy. But overall, I think it was good for them to make some choices for themselves. Robert returned in the late afternoon, looking both exhausted and relieved. The temporary custody order had been granted, and the restraining order was in process. The hospital had informed him that Heather would likely be released tomorrow but had agreed to notify us before that happened. The therapist I spoke with suggested we establish a routine as quickly as possible, Robert told us as we prepared dinner together. The children need structure to feel secure, especially after everything that's happened. We could create a family calendar, I suggested, remembering how Thomas and I had organized our household when Robert and Catherine were young. Everyone can see what to expect each day. I'd like that, Emma said from the doorway, where she had been listening. Mom never told us plans until the last minute. It was hard to know what was happening. Robert looked stricken at this insight into his children's daily anxiety, but recovered quickly. Then a family calendar it is, he agreed. We'll start tonight, after dinner. That evening, gathered around the dining table with colored markers and a large wall calendar, the process of healing began in earnest. Each person chose a color. Robert blue, Aiden green, Emma purple, Lily pink, Catherine orange, and I took yellow. We marked important dates, created a chore rotation, scheduled time for homework and play. What about Friday night movie night? Aiden asked hesitantly. We used to do that before. Before Mom said it was a waste of time, Emma finished when he trailed off. Robert looked at his children steadily. Friday night, movies are back, he declared, writing it on the calendar with a flourish that made Lily giggle. As bedtime approached, I noticed the children growing anxious again. The day's activities had provided distraction, but night brought vulnerability. Would you like me to read you a story? Like I used to? I offered, when Lily clung to Robert at the foot of the stairs. Yes, please, she whispered. To my surprise, Emma and even Aiden joined us in the girls' room. I selected a beloved book from their childhood, and as I read, I watched tension ease from their small bodies. Robert stood in the doorway, watching with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Later, after the children were asleep, Robert, Catherine, and I sat in the living room, speaking in low voices about the challenges ahead. The lawyer thinks the divorce will be complicated, Robert admitted. Heather is likely to fight for custody and significant financial support. What about her relationship with Brad Miller? Catherine asked. Doesn't that affect things? It helps our case, but she'll deny it if she thinks it will benefit her legally. Robert looked troubled. The hardest part is knowing what to tell the children. They're confused, hurt, angry, all valid feelings, but I don't want them to carry that burden. Children are remarkably resilient, I reminded him, thinking of how Catherine had coped with the death of her beloved grandparents, how Robert had adapted when we moved across the country for Thomas's job. What they need most is honesty, appropriate to their ages, and consistency. And love, Catherine added, which they have in abundance right here. The next morning, Robert received a call from the hospital. Heather was being released but had agreed to enter a voluntary treatment program for anxiety and emotional regulation. The therapist suggested that while this was a positive step, we should maintain boundaries and proceed with legal protections. Robert relayed this to the children carefully. Your mom is getting some help for her big feelings, he explained to Lily. Just like you see the school counselor sometimes when you feel overwhelmed. Is she still mad at us? Aiden asked directly. She's dealing with a lot of anger right now, Robert answered honestly. But that anger is her responsibility to manage, not yours to fix. Your job is just to be kids. Emma seemed skeptical. What if she doesn't get better? Robert sat beside her on the sofa. Then we'll deal with that too. But regardless of what happens with Mom, you three will always be safe, loved, and protected. That's my promise to you. As the day progressed, we fell into a natural rhythm. Breakfast together, quiet time for reading or games, lunch, afternoon activities. Robert spent time on his laptop, updating his resume and researching therapy options for the children. Catherine and I focused on creating a stable environment, neither overcompensating with excessive attention nor minimizing the trauma they had experienced. In the evening, as I was helping Lily with her bath, she asked unexpectedly, "Is this my home now, Grandma?" The question caught me off guard. "Well, this is always a home for you," I answered carefully. "Right now, you're staying here while Dad figures things out." She nodded, splashing thoughtfully. "I like it here. It feels like when Grandpa was alive and we had Christmas at your house. You remember that?" I asked, surprised she would recall those early Christmases. "A little bit," she said. "I remember the cookies shaped like stars, and Grandpa letting me sit on his lap to look at the tree lights. The memory brought tears to my eyes. He loved you so very much, Lily. Dad says he's watching over us," she continued. "Do you think he saw what happened at our house?" "I think," I said slowly, "that Grandpa would be very proud of how brave you and your brother and sister have been, and how brave your dad is being now." She seemed satisfied with this answer and went back to playing with her bath toys. These glimpses into the children's processing of events, sometimes practical, sometimes philosophical, continued to emerge in quiet moments throughout those first days. By the third evening, a tentative new normal had begun to establish itself. Robert had secured a counseling appointment for all 3 children, followed by family therapy. His job interview had been moved up, and the temporary custody order was holding firm. Most importantly, the children were showing small but significant signs of relaxation, laughing more freely, expressing preferences, disagreeing with each other in the ordinary way of siblings rather than with the tense caution they had displayed initially. After dinner, Robert found me in the kitchen and embraced me suddenly. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. That's what mothers do," I replied simply. "Not all mothers," he said, pulling back to look at me. I didn't see it for so long. How extraordinary it is to have a parent who puts their children first, who creates safety instead of chaos. I won't take that for granted ever again. In that moment, I felt Thomas's presence so strongly I nearly looked over my shoulder, expecting to see him leaning in the doorway with his gentle smile. He would be proud of his son, finding his way back to himself, to the values we had tried to instill. As Robert returned to the living room where Catherine and the children were setting up a board game, I took a moment alone, overwhelmed by both grief and gratitude. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be legal battles, emotional setbacks, financial challenges. Heather would remain a part of our lives in some capacity as the children's mother. But looking at my family gathered in the warm light of my home, I felt a profound certainty that we would navigate those challenges together. Out of the darkness of Christmas Day had come an unexpected gift: the renewal of our family bonds, stronger and more honest than before. The sound of laughter drew me back to the living room. Lily was dancing victoriously around the coffee table while Aiden protested something about the game rules. Emma and Catherine were giggling, and Robert was shaking his head in mock disapproval. "Grandma," Lily called when she saw me. "Come play with us. We need you on our team." As I joined them, taking my place in the circle, I knew that whatever came next, this moment of connection, of belonging, was the foundation upon which healing would build. The cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom as I set the Easter table, their delicate pink visible through the dining room windows. 3 months had passed since that life-altering Christmas, months of challenges and growth, setbacks and small victories. Robert and the children had moved into a modest apartment nearby 2 weeks after coming to stay with me. He had insisted they needed to establish their own space, though they still spent several days a week at my house. His new job had started in mid-January. Less prestigious than his previous position, but with flexible hours that allowed him to be more present for the children. The legal proceedings had been difficult but necessary. Heather had initially contested the custody arrangement, but Emma's recordings and the children's sessions with court-appointed therapists had supported Robert's petition for primary custody. Heather now had supervised visitation twice a month, a schedule that might expand if she continued her treatment program and demonstrated stability. The most shocking discoveries had come through the financial investigation. Heather had systematically diverted family funds to private accounts for over 2 years, accumulating nearly $50,000 that should have gone toward the mortgage and children's expenses. She had also attempted to take out loans using the children's social security numbers and had forged Robert's signature on multiple financial documents. Brad Miller, her paramour and co-conspirator, had disappeared when the allegations became public, his real estate license now under investigation for ethical violations. Heather had been left to face the consequences alone, a betrayal that seemed to finally pierce her carefully constructed reality. The children's recovery was ongoing, with both progress and challenges. Aiden had thrown himself into basketball, finding confidence and camaraderie on the court. Emma had blossomed in the safety of our family support, her natural intelligence and curiosity re-emerging as she no longer feared drawing attention to herself. Lily still had nightmares occasionally, but was working with a play therapist who specialized in childhood trauma. Catherine had extended her stay twice, before reluctantly returning to Colorado, though she visited monthly and video called the children almost daily. Her relationship with Robert had deepened, the siblings supporting each other in ways they hadn't since adolescence. As for me, I had found new purpose as the steady presence in a family rebuilding itself. I maintained the rhythm of our week: Sunday dinners at my house, Wednesday afternoon activities with the children after school, emergency backup when Robert's work demands conflicted with parenting obligations. It wasn't the retirement Thomas and I had planned, but it felt right, necessary, and deeply fulfilling. Today's Easter celebration would be the first major holiday since Christmas. I had approached the planning carefully, balancing new traditions with beloved customs. The table was set with my mother's china, but decorated with paper flowers the children had made. The menu included Thomas's special glazed ham alongside Catherine's vegan spring salad. The doorbell rang, and I hurried to answer it, finding Robert and the children on the porch, all dressed in their Easter best. "Happy Easter, Mom," Robert said, bending to kiss my cheek. The children echoed his greeting, Lily twirling to show off her new yellow dress. "You all look wonderful," I told them, ushering them inside. Catherine's already in the kitchen, helping with the last-minute preparations. As we moved through the house, I noted the subtle differences in everyone. Robert stood straighter, his eyes clearer, the haunted look that had lingered for weeks after Christmas finally gone. Aiden had grown at least an inch, his voice occasionally cracking as adolescence advanced. Emma wore her hair down rather than in the severe ponytail Heather had insisted upon, and Lily moved with the boisterous energy of a child no longer afraid of making too much noise. In the kitchen, Catherine was arranging deviled eggs on a platter. She embraced each child warmly, complimenting Aiden on his new haircut, admiring Emma's bracelet, and lifting Lily for a dramatic spin that produced delighted giggles. "Everything looks amazing, Mom," Robert said, surveying the feast taking shape. "Well, it's a special day," I replied. "Our first Easter as we are now." He nodded, understanding my meaning. The new configuration of our family, not broken but reshaped, stronger in some places, still healing in others. The meal was a joyful occasion, with none of the tension that had characterized family gatherings in recent years. We talked about the children's school projects, Catherine's promotion, Robert's growing client list in his new position. After dessert, the traditional egg hunt in the backyard produced the usual competitive spirit between siblings and plenty of chocolate-smeared smiles. As afternoon eased into evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen, washing the last of the serving dishes. Robert appeared beside me, picking up a towel to dry. "I've been meaning to tell you," he said, carefully polishing a crystal platter. "The therapist says the kids are doing remarkably well, all things considered. She credits the consistent, loving support system they have." He gave me a meaningful look. "That's you, Mom. You've been our rock through all this." "We've all supported each other," I demurred. "True, but it started with you. Standing your ground at Christmas, being there when we needed sanctuary." He set down the platter. "I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately, about what he would say about all this. He would be so proud of you," I said with certainty. The courage it took to face the truth, to protect your children, to rebuild. Robert smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I think he tried to warn me, you know. There were things he said about Heather over the years, observations that I dismissed. I wish I'd listened. We see what we're ready to see," I told him. "Thomas understood that. He would never have judged you for it." Our conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Robert's phone. He glanced at it, his expression turning serious. "It's Heather." In the 3 months since Christmas, Heather had made various attempts to reassert control, from tearful apologies to vicious accusations, manipulative overtures to the children followed by periods of complete disengagement. Each time, Robert had maintained the boundaries established by the court and recommended by the therapists, neither demonizing her to the children nor allowing her to disrupt their healing process. "Do you need privacy?" I offered, moving toward the door. "No," he said firmly. "Nothing needs to be hidden anymore." He answered the call, his voice calm and neutral. "Hello, Heather." I couldn't hear her response, but I could see from Robert's face that she was in one of her conciliatory modes. "The children had a nice Easter, thank you for asking," he replied to whatever she had said. "Yes, they received your cards." He listened for a moment, then shook his head slightly. "No, that won't be possible. The visitation schedule is clear, and changing it at the last minute isn't good for the kids. They need consistency." Another pause, his expression firming. "I understand you're disappointed, but the court order is in place for a reason. We can discuss this with the mediator at our next session, but for now, The schedule stands. As the conversation continued, I observed with pride how Robert maintained his composure, neither antagonistic nor yielding to emotional manipulation. When he finally ended the call, he let out a long breath. "She wants to take the kids to her parents for a week this summer," he explained. "Outside the agreed visitation schedule and unsupervised." "How do you feel about that?" I asked, knowing the complex emotions he still navigated regarding his estranged wife. "Part of me wants to believe she's genuinely improving," he admitted. "The therapist says her borderline personality disorder diagnosis explains a lot of her behavior, though it doesn't excuse it. But then I remember how convincing she can be when it serves her purpose. How many times I believed things would change." He looked out the window to where the children were still playing in the yard, Catherine joining in their game of tag. "Their safety and stability have to come first. Maybe someday, if she truly commits to treatment long-term, we can revisit more flexible arrangements. But not yet." His resolve was one of many changes I had observed in my son. The Robert of a year ago would have acquiesced to Heather's demands to keep the peace, potentially at his children's expense. This Robert had found his voice, his boundaries, and his courage. "You're doing the right thing," I assured him. Our moment of reflection was interrupted by Lily bursting into the kitchen, slightly breathless from running. "Dad! Grandma! Come see what we found in the garden." Hand in hand, we followed her outside, where Emma and Aidan were crouched near my perennial bed. Catherine stood behind them, smiling knowingly. "Look!" Lily pointed excitedly. There, among the spring bulbs, was a robin's nest with 3 small blue eggs nestled inside. "New life," Robert said softly, crouching beside his children to admire the discovery. "Can we check on them every day?" Aidan asked, showing rare enthusiasm for something beyond sports and video games. "Maybe not every day," I cautioned. "We don't want to disturb the mother too much. But we can watch from a distance. See the babies when they hatch. We could keep a journal," Emma suggested, always the scientist, document their growth." As the children discussed their monitoring plans, Robert straightened and put his arm around my shoulders. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For saying we," he replied. "For making this place a home for all of us, even now that we have our own apartment. For giving my children roots while they're finding their wings again." I leaned into his embrace, watching the 3 young lives before me, damaged but healing, uncertain but hopeful. Just like the family they belonged to. Later that evening, after the Easter dishes were washed and the leftover ham packaged for Robert to take home, after the children had gathered their Easter baskets and changed out of their nice clothes, we stood on the porch saying our goodbyes. "See you on Wednesday, Grandma," Emma confirmed, our after-school ritual now a fixed point in her week. "I'll be waiting," I promised, hugging each child in turn. As their car pulled away, Catherine joined me on the porch, wrapping a cardigan around herself against the evening chill. "They're going to be okay," she said, watching the taillights disappear down the street. "All of them." "Yes," I agreed. "They are." Looking back at that Christmas day, at the heartbreaking words, "There's no place for you here," that had sent me driving home alone in tears, I could never have imagined the journey that would follow. The pain had been real, the challenges substantial, but through it all, our family had found its way back to what mattered most: love, truth, and the courage to protect each other. There was, indeed, a place for each of us here. Not in a perfect family, we were far from that, but in a real one, messy and complicated and deeply connected. And in that knowledge, I found peace. I've shared this journey with you today because family relationships can be the source of our deepest pain and our greatest healing. Has your family ever faced a crisis that ultimately brought you closer? Or have you found the courage to establish boundaries with toxic family members? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a like. Sharing our stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, sometimes the darkest moments can lead to unexpected light if we're brave enough to walk through them together.